union leadership is going to ask questions, and Jim Wager and I, everybody knows this Superintendent Jim Wager, Jim Wager and I will answer questions to the best of our ability. Hope you understand there's going to be some answers that we don't know that yet, or that is not a district decision. But we're going to do our best. It's been the most challenging summer in my 20 years in education, and I certainly think we have done our due diligence to ensure our opening in a hybrid model is going to be the best it can be given the parameters that we're asked to work within. We are going to offer a full remote option to our 6th through 12th grade population. Most people know that we've offered it K-5. We are going to offer it 6 to 12, but it's not the optimal situation. It's not like we have this incredibly robust program separate from what we're doing in the hybrid model. It's going to consist of secondary teachers recording their lessons and posting them on your Google Classroom. And those students who want to be full remote, it's probably their parents' choice more likely, those students are going to be required to go in and watch those lessons to get what they would typically get in person. And we don't expect to do it live. We expect to, maybe someday we'll get there. But, and if we end up in a full remote option for everybody, we're certainly going to encourage a lot more student-teacher interaction remotely. But right now, to satisfy the hundreds of kids and families that want full remote options at 6th through 12th grade, we are going to ask teachers, record your lessons. If you do the same lesson 3 or 4 times, just post your best one. My suggestion is record them all, post the best one. There's going to be training for teachers to get more savvy with Promethean boards and things like that. And we're not where we want to be as far as 100% remote capabilities. Clearly, the whole profession has changed in 6 months of how you go about executing your craft. That does not go unrecognized by us. We understand that we are not going to be batting 1,000 in September, but we're going to progressively get better as an organization. We're charged with educating the students of this city, and we're going to do that to the best of our ability regardless of the circumstances surrounding us. And all I ask everybody who works for this organization is to be part of the solution. We know there's a lot of problems out there, and you're going to ask questions, and the union's going to ask questions of us that we might not have answers to today, but we're going to keep working hard to get the right answers and to continue to make sure that this building and every building in the organization is safe for students and staff. So we'll get right into it because I know time is important to everybody. So thanks again for coming. So we'll turn it over to you guys. Got a microphone right there.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick reminder as to how we started this. We knew that there were a lot of questions and concerns that were out within our field, and so we decided to put out a survey and have you respond. And then we took all of the questions that we were provided, which was of over 44 pages worth of questions. And then as the exec board, we went through and tried to get the ones that were redundant. And so maybe not all of your questions have been included, but we believe that we had to pare it down even more for this discussion, and we then separated it into the most pertinent questions that were most questioned continuous times, and used those as the springboard for what you will be hearing and what the questions are that we are posing to the superintendent. And we hope that you appreciate the fact that it was a lot of work, and we appreciate you for responding. We are glad that most of you did come in and respond to the survey, and it was over the majority. So I believe that that was a success in just itself. So thank you so much for that, and you can tell your colleagues too that we really need your input in order for us to know what we need to respond to, both as the union and as the superintendent office. And without those, then we don't know what the concerns are. So please keep the communication open. I know I'm new at this, but I'm going to try my best. Just have patience with me. Any questions for me, or? Thank you.
Lucky you.
Just pass the mic.
Number one?
Okay.
No, don't. We'll do number one.
Oh, number one. That's me. Okay. What happens when someone in our school, either staff or student, gets diagnosed with COVID-19? Now, there's subcategories. What is the plan for communication? When would someone be asked to quarantine? When would a shutdown be? And what is the plan for communication with the Department of Health?
I'll take this first one. This right here. Okay, the plan for communication is that the district only reports on positive cases. And because of HIPAA, we are not going to say Dave Halloran's got COVID-19. So what, the health department is going to be our partner throughout all this, without a question. When it comes to contact tracing, they've been doing it for decades. Long before COVID, the health department's done contact tracing, so they will be our partner in contact tracing. So we get a confirmed case of a student with COVID. We're obviously going to tell the school community. That classroom, by law, will be vacated for at least 24 hours. It's up to them as to who's going to quarantine. It's up to the health department as to who's going to quarantine. My guess is every student in that class. That's why we've taken great steps to ensure that students are not traveling as much as possible. Even in the secondary level, we're doing our best to keep kids as much as possible together. The primary level, it's certainly much more robust as far as keeping kids in pods. So you have a student in a particular classroom test positive, health department's going to be our guiding partner on this. We notify them right away, or they notify us right away. The truth be told, the parent doesn't have to tell us. The health department would know, and the health department would say, you have a child that is positive for COVID-19. We're going to end up figuring out who it is because of the necessary information they're going to ask from contact tracing. And I'd like to think the parents are going to work with us, but you never know. Some parents don't. And that's their right when it comes to HIPAA. But typically, we're going to know who the student is, and the health department and us will share information. We will give them all the necessary phone numbers, addresses, and names of students who are in that pod. They will contact those children, that instructor, and that is who will be asked to quarantine. We will probably figure out, like I said, who the student is, and if there's other teachers, staff members who may have been in close contact with that child, they may be asked to quarantine. But that quarantine decision is going to be health department. When would a shutdown occur? That is a district decision, but again, that's going to be done in conjunction with the health department. The health department cannot shut us down, but they can prevent us from reopening. So, it's not a power struggle with them, it's going to be a partnership. It's going to be, okay, do we have an isolated case? Has the child's contacts been limited here at school? We know we can clean effectively and make it safe the next day, but if they start popping up, we're going to err on the side of caution. We're not going to forge ahead if we think that there's a hot spot forming in one of our schools. And plan for communication with the health department is all the time, every day. Mike DeMagistris, our athletic director, safety and healthy coordinator, is our COVID coordinator. He met with Laurel Headwell, and we're fortunate. Cody Headwell, our associate principal in Boulevard, is sibling of the Fulton County Director of Public Health. So Mike will be our liaison. I certainly have Laurel on my cell phone. She has my number. We'll be in constant communication with the Director of Public Health. I do ask this. Any employee has a health concern about protocol, procedures, what the district's doing, please do not contact Fulton County Public Health. They're going to spin you right back to us. And that's already occurred, and I appreciate staff members with concerns coming to us. You can go through your union, and if we know you got valid concerns, and we're not going to dismiss them. We're going to hopefully answer and make you feel more comfortable. But I ask you to come to us first, and certainly if we don't satisfy you, you feel like we are out of compliance, then do what you have to do. But they are going to just send you right back to the district. Thank you.
Can the school district take a student's temperature daily? We are not confident that parents will take their child's temperature daily as required, or quarantine children that have been exposed to the virus. And along with that, will teachers have access to thermometers to test students as they walk into the classroom? Or will administration and staff be stationed in a lobby or some similar place with thermometers to take students' temps as they walk in?
we are able to take the temperatures of students when they come in daily, and we have acquired the necessary amount of thermometers to be able to do that with multiple points of entry in each building to minimize potential backup of students as they come in. It will be a combination of staff and administration that'll take care of the temperatures. We're also in the process of getting the Health Check app up and running, and once that's set, that'll go out to parents, staff, where they answer the required questions from the state and send it in. We get a report every day of who's completed the health check, who has, if they've answered it honestly, if a student has passed the health check based on their response, it'll flag those students that have not. And then we follow the guidelines. If a student comes in and has a temperature of 100 degrees or greater, they're sent off to an isolation room, contact the parents, make arrangements for them to be picked up. And at that point, what we can do at that point is recommend to the parent that the child see the primary care physician and not return until they are cleared by that primary care physician. That may mean being sent off for a COVID test. It may not. It may mean that this child just had the stomach bug. But that is for the parent to take the child in that regard. Did I catch everything?
Yeah, I think I just want to add one more thing to that. That this is a change. What Jim just mentioned is a change from, if you listen to our previous conversations or messaging, was that parents are we're asking parents to be responsible for temperature checks. And that's recommended by the state of New York, the health department. But at the same time, we need to be realistic and think about the clientele we serve. And we know that a lot of our parents, so whoever wrote that, I agree with you. And I think we all did, the administrative team, as we wrestled with this, the thought was, well, at least some of them are going to take it seriously and take their child's temperature. And we're still going to recommend that. Because if the child has a temperature over 100, the child should not leave the home, except to go see their doctor and determine what's wrong with them. So we're going to encourage parents to take temperatures at home, but we are going to take everybody's temperature upon entering the building. I talked to Mr. Etherton, because for the last few years you've heard about single points of access. Well, we are obviously moving in a different direction because we have a different challenge in front of us right now. So we are going to go to staffed multiple entrances, take everybody's temperature. Staff, we certainly expect staff to take their temperature every day. We shouldn't be chasing staff members around. There will be, you can do it at home, the app, you can fill out the app, check my temperature, here's the questions I've read. Those attestations that you will be asked to perform every day, it's like 5 questions. Mike, do you want to speak to that at all?
There's 5 questions from the CDC that have to be answered. And if you're answering yes to any of those questions, you should be calling 911 because those are life-threatening things that you should go to 911. The 15 required things from the state are things like headache, nausea, been in contact with someone that's tested positive with COVID-14 in the last 14 days. There's 15 different ones, runny nose. You'll submit it. It's going to filter to the school buildings. Staff have to do it every day and take their temperature every day. Students, it's periodically with the questions, but temperature with the students every day. So temperature students every day, temperature staff every day. Questions are every day with the staff, and it's periodic with the students. We should have the app up and running hopefully by either the end of this week or early next week, and that stuff will be pushed out to the staff to use. And it's very simple, and it probably takes less than 30 seconds to send it, and it'll go to each building. You will, as teachers in your first period class, be able to pull up on the app who's been screened. It'll tell you who's been screened. That's the feature that it has. So you will see, Mike DeMagistris, green, he passed. So it's user friendly, and we should have that up and running in a week and a half.
Like periodically, what do you mean by that? Is there?
It could be. We have to determine that, but it could be.
We determine it.
Yeah, the district will determine that. It could be if I'm not sure what the days are with the Huskies and Dragons, but if I'm in school Monday, Wednesday, we might. Dragons are Monday, Wednesday. Sorry. It might be every Monday. Those kids, Dragons are going to screen every Monday. Every Tuesday, then they're good for the week.
My next question is, what if the parents and they're not complying with that app.
We can screen them here.
We do it right here.
Anyone that comes up yellow or red, we have the capability, the nurses will have the capability to screen them right then and there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We see this being a very challenging to do it. You look at kindergartners, first graders, parents don't have cell phones, and unfortunately, it's what police is pointing out, some parents are not that tech savvy. We've had no children, we'll get a practice. Once a week, periodically, we determined it was maybe once a week. It could be more than that, but we'll start with once a week. And if we have to backpack home hard copies to parents who don't have the app, don't have cell phones, that's what we'll do. It's going to be a bit of a pain for us, but it's a requirement, and it's the safety of all of us for why we're doing it, so we think it's time well spent.
Will a teacher that has one, to see their doctor for a COVID test script, or two, take time to get a COVID test, have to use a sick day if it is related to COVID?
Well, the short answer is no. If it's related to COVID and you're being required to take a test because of something related to school, the answer is no. And if you're asked to quarantine for 14 days, there's no use of your accumulated sick time. That's federal law.
Quarantine. Who has to quarantine when someone tests positive? Just the child, staff member, the whole class?
That's dependent on the guidance we get from the public health department, right? 'Cause parents not obligated to tell us if the child is tested positive or they've had someone in the home test positive. That information would come to us from the health department without the specific child name, and then through the contact tracing process that the health department deploys, they would inform and us, anyone in these rooms at these times will be notified to be quarantined.
Jim, can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Just so everyone knows, when someone tests positive, this is what the health department's going to do. If I have symptoms today, my symptoms started today, this health department will go back 2 days from the start of the symptoms for contact tracing. If I don't have symptoms and I test positive, they're going to go back from the day of the positive test for contact tracing. So that's how they're doing it. That's why when you see in the paper, if you were in Walmart and such dates, they went back 2 days before the symptom had started. And if you were in those areas and you developed symptoms, they want you to, contact your doctor and think about quarantine. So it's 2 days with symptoms, and it's the day of the test with no symptoms, or day of the positive results with no symptoms.
If a teacher is home for quarantine or illness, who's covering the classes? Or are all of that teacher's classes also home for the quarantine period?
It depends on how the staff member came into being quarantined. If it was something out in a private life, I don't think the health department would determine that the class needs to be quarantined, so we would attempt to secure a sub. If it's school-related, chances are the entire class would be asked to be quarantined, and whether we're able to continue a remote instructional program with the same teacher with those kids, I think it's going to depend on symptoms and how that quarantine progresses. But to me, in a perfect world, that teacher who's quarantined would be able to continue interfacing, engaging their children while at home.
On page 20 of the reopening document, it states that if school is to reclose due to children's health being in danger of COVID-19, elementary faculty will still be required to come to school each day for collaboration among teachers. Isn't it just as dangerous for staff to come as children? What is deemed as unhealthy for children should be deemed unhealthy for adults as well. It would also put those of us in a horrible situation with our own children. We would need to find competent childcare who can keep our children safe as well as assist them in schoolwork. Even in non-pandemic times, it would be impossible.
Well, certainly understand the person's concern as far as that goes, but teachers, administrators, we are essential workers, and if the school shuts down, we don't want a repeat of what we saw in the spring. This district did as good as any district that I'm aware of teaching, transitioning from March till June. But I'd like to think that every professional among us knows that it was a far cry from what we need to keep these kids progressing in the manner that they need to. So in a full shutdown, staff will be asked to report and to teach, and students will be asked to log on to their Chromebooks from home and learn. It can't be assignment once a week shouted out. And there was, I'm not going to say that, we had teachers that just ran with it, transitioned amazingly, and did a great job. And others that we know were very seldomly logging in or putting out assignments. I saw my own children in a different district. So it's not unique to Gloversville, it's a professional issue of our profession. So you are essential workers, you're going to be asked to report. I just got off the phone with an attorney talking about the capabilities of school districts to provide child care for essential workers. And there's always liability. So it's like, well, what's the exposure? What's the liability? There's always going to be liability. But there are partners out there that are registered daycare providers. Maybe we can bring it in-house. Maybe we can do something a little bit different. Obviously, as a school district, I'm not just going to say, bring in your infant. But a teacher in his or her classroom interacting with their children remotely in a building that's being cleaned every day by our buildings and ground staff is a safe place for you to report. It's as safe as anywhere to go. It's much more safe than a grocery store because you're the only person going in and out of that door besides the cleaner who comes in and out of there. Wear a mask in and out of the office, whoever you interface with. We believe it's safe, and I certainly understand the challenges of childcare, but as every essential worker in every profession, it's a challenge that those of us who have children have to overcome in this environment. Yes. That's a state government made that decision. We could have brought you 50% of you in every day during the last spring. We decided to keep everybody home, but we could have had 50% of our staff come in from day one of the shutdown. You're welcome.
How will a teacher's health be protected if students take off their masks or refuse to wear them? Discipline issue? Will students sign a waiver protecting staff in the event a student gets sick while in their class?
I think in terms of health, welfare, and safety, it's the same protocols for the students as it is the adults. We have to do an exemplary job of cleaning and disinfecting those spaces, and classroom spaces in those high-touch areas, in the bathrooms, doorknobs, and those sorts of things. In terms of the mask wearing in class, as long as they're, according to the guidelines from the state, as long as there's 6 feet of social distance all the way around an individual, in this case a student for instruction, they're allowed to remove their mask. In those instances where someone is non-compliant or has a health issue that, unbeknownst to anyone in the room, right? The response to that will depend a bit on level. I mean, if you're talking first and second graders, there's quite a different approach to corralling that youngster and expediting them out of the space as safely and as calmly and as quietly as possible, and then providing some additional education to the parent, the child, on the importance of mask. And if that instructional time is too long for them to wear a mask, provide some break in there in a safe and productive way. A non-compliant secondary student just refuses to put it on, that's endangering not only the teacher's health, but the health of the other students, and we take appropriate action up to points that you're not allowed to come back in person. We reserve the right to put them in a full remote setting if they're going to have actions and behaviors that endanger the health and well-being of not just the adults, but their fellow classmates as well. It's complicated in some respects and not in others.
Who will make sure that the cleaning is being done properly? When will each room or bathroom or high-frequency area be cleaned, and what cleaning supplies will be used?
So obviously, Robert Rockwell is our Director of Buildings and Grounds. He oversees it, but Bob Williams is here. He is the head custodian in the middle school. Bob, would you be comfortable speaking to what you foresee your protocols being?
Right now, we're working on that. We're trying to put a plan together to see who's what we're gonna have, how we're gonna do it, staff we're gonna have, and we're looking to try to get a few more staff to do it. So we're working on putting a plan together as we speak.
The expectation is that no student will ever be asked to sit at a desk that another student has sat at without that desk being disinfected. You know, I had a conversation with some other superintendents, and some of them are asking teachers to clean spaces. I'm not going to ask you to clean your spaces, but I'm certainly going to provide you with wipes where you're welcome to do it. You're welcome to, you know, we can't tell students in a plan, couldn't say students are going to be part of the plan. But if you want to take extra steps and say, hey guys, you want to help me? Let's everybody grab a wipe and just do something quick because that's where you're at. We're okay with that. We're going to support you. I'm not going to mandate you do it. We have good buildings and ground staff who takes their job seriously. The high school's probably got the biggest challenge because of the amount of transitioning of children, but the guidance department in high school has done a nice job with the administration of creating almost pods within the high school where students spend several periods in the same classroom. A teacher would come in. I think with the teachers in that regard, there should be some kind of coordination of, all right, I'm going to teach from the same spot roughly that another staff member did, although we both cleared, have some sanitation wipes there and just wipe off the area, whatever, the phone, the keyboard, the mouse. I would do that, I guess, if I was a teacher. I'd certainly be willing to do that. It's going to be very difficult to have our buildings and ground staff to come in on those 4-minute periods and do that for you every time. So I think that's a reasonable request to teachers. But anytime that kids are leaving the classroom in the high school and a new set of kids are coming in, the buildings and grounds department or the staff in the high school are creating a schedule where they're going to get in there and disinfect all the desks in between the usage of students. So they have a tough job in this environment. We went with the 5-day schedule instead of shutting down on Wednesday because we had the faith. We're purchasing the equipment, these anti-foggers where it disinfects everything within 4 seconds or 4 minutes and dissipates. We believe that we're going to be able to keep these rooms and these buildings and these hallways as sanitary as they've ever been.
If and when a vaccine is available, will school be a place where students and staff can get inoculated? Will the vaccine be mandatory?
Not likely and not by us. It won't be made mandatory by us. That would be the government. And I don't believe they'll use schools as a location. The health department already has set up locations for that type of thing, drugstores, other things like that.
I believe you already answered the next one, so we're going to skip down to number 2 under use of leave days, okay? I have seasonal allergies and tend to have a periodic minor cough, scratchy throat, stuffy, or running nose. Do I stay at home on the days that I have those symptoms? Can I do remote teaching on the days I need to stay home? How does that work for our sick days?
Yeah. In terms of a known allergy, I believe, and Mike can speak to this as well, documentation from your physician that says, yes, this person suffers from seasonal allergies, something that isn't presenting with a temperature during those allergy flare-ups, that's something that can be accommodated with the appropriate documentation. As far as, so that way the individual does not have to stay home if they know this is my fall allergies or my spring allergies if we're still in the same spot. And in terms of you get there and it feels like a bit more and you have to present with the temperature, the same process. You go to isolation, we get you sorted out, you go home, see your primary care physician, and again, if you have to be COVID tested and remain out as a result of that, then that's not an initial use of sick time.
This relates to substitutes. As we know, substitutes can be challenging in normal times. What is being done or what could be done to address the sub shortage, and what happens when we are understaffed?
Attempt to answer that. What is being done to address the sub shortage? The governor's threatening to hold more money. Unfortunately, that's the cool, honest, short answer. I don't have an answer for you for what to do with the sub shortage except to try to make our buildings as safe and as transparent of what's going on here as possible. And for people, whether it's reaching out to retirees, people who are just certified, or maybe people who are not certified, working on it, want to work on it, and recruiting people like that. What happens when we're understaffed? It's a great idea, or it's a great question, and I'm receptive to ideas, because it's going to be a challenge. I mean, if we find ourselves in a situation where we can't properly supervise and educate the students in front of us, even at the reduced capacity, we'll take steps. But that's one of those things, bus drivers is another. It's not just classroom teachers or aides or TAs. Bus drivers, if those of us think about bus drivers, are often are people who are retired, who are doing it because they just want the health insurance. They are likely some of our most immunocompromised staff members. We happen to work through HFM for our transportation, but that's, not everybody's certified to drive a school bus with children. So if we have a lot of bus driver shortage, that's going to cause serious interruptions. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's a great question, and we will continue working on it.
Okay, this is options for remote instruction. Parents and students will have a choice to use remote learning if they feel uncomfortable returning. Will teachers who are uncomfortable returning get the same respect and choice?
Will teachers who are uncomfortable returning get the same respect and choice? I guess the short answer is we are not going to allow people to use sick time because they're afraid of getting sick. If people have pre-existing conditions and they get notice from their doctor, the district is, by law, we are required to provide up to a certain amount of time. If you're taking care of a person who is immunocompromised, there's laws, federal laws and state laws set up. I emailed Teresa some of the documents for people to fill out. But as essential workers, we're not at liberty to say, stay home, and we'll keep sending the paychecks to kids. Education is secondary to your fears. I'm not trying to sound callous or that I lack compassion. Thank you, Ben. I'm just trying to be direct and honest. This is what we do to earn our check. We come in, we educate children. The environment's changed somewhat. We're reducing half the number of kids in front of you on a daily basis. We're instituting requirements for masks, for sanitation, for better airflow. We're doing our due diligence to ensure a safe environment that we can provide. Just like the grocery stores that have to stay open so we can have food in our refrigerators. Just like the nurses at the hospitals greeting patients at the ER who are walking in cold. It's an important profession that we do. I often think it's the most important profession out there. But we're required to answer the bell.
Sort of going along with that, if a staff member has a documented medical condition, right, you talked about, which does put them at high risk to get the virus or have worse outcomes from getting the virus, will they be allowed to teach their classes remotely, or will they be giving an alternate assignment? How are we handling that?
It's going to, to be honest, it'll look a little bit different at the elementary and the secondary level. In part secondary because of the certification piece, right? We do, for those that have some medical frailties or greater risk or dangers than others, of course, we'll work to make reasonable accommodations for them. And if it is there's lots of factors that go into that. We still need to provide the best possible educational experience for our kids while maintaining health and safety. So in part, it's going to, I'm kind of looking at the next question with immunocompromised, is finding the who and the how many, and how best does that fit into the numbers that we get for the remote option. Do we have enough adults that are immunocompromised or have another situation that would preclude them from meeting with students face to face, and it matches with need in remote learning? That's a fairly straightforward and easy solution. you can pair certifications with groups of kids. If they don't, that's going to take a little more creative doing. I don't want to give a definitive answer that they'll be reassigned when we don't have the necessary information to give a definitive answer in that way.
It's a tough question. It's a tough question.
He answered for it. Yeah, so skip the next one. Terry, you're up.
Instruction and planning. Good virtual learning takes a lot of time to prepare, organize, and monitor. With the hybrid model proposed, when are teachers supposed to set up and monitor all virtual learning while teaching kids all day, every day?
So I'm going to pass it over to Jim in a second. This is what I just want people to understand about what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to do something you've never been asked to do, to teach in this hybrid model. As I said, I don't expect us to be charged out of the gate at full capacity of what this is going to look like. I think it's going to look different within the same building, because some teachers are going to have a knack for offering in-person instruction and then follow up remote challenges that allow students to work independently, remotely collaborate, and hopefully some time for them to check and connect for those students. Even though they are going to have the other half of the class in front of them. There might be a time when the kids in front of you are asked to read quietly for 20 minutes. I'm going to jump on with your peers, and so please read quietly. And maybe the day before you told those kids, log on at 12, I want to see how you're doing with those math problems I gave you. And at 12, 8 out of 10 of your kids who are home remote are logged in, and you say, how's everybody doing? And they just, okay, well, I posted that lesson I taught, so if you have any troubles, go into Google Classroom and you can rewatch it. Other teachers, I think we're going to have to really provide some scaffolding and support to help them understand how to, or learn how to challenge kids remotely. How do you take a kid who, and the number of kids, when you've never done it for 25 years of your profession, and let go of the reins, but yet you're savvy, or you're capable enough in this realm to provide independent learning opportunities for those kids. We're going to have everywhere from people who are off and running with it day one, and others who we really need to help and support. So the short answer is, there is no short answer for me. Maybe Jim has one.
No. In terms of a short answer, it is going to pose a challenge. And when I met virtually with the secondary department chairs a few days ago, one of the things we talked about is those days, how do I know if those remote students are present? And I think it's important for you as professionals to have a number of different ways in which to check in on their engagement throughout the day. And that could be from 2:30 to 2:50 at the secondary level to, all right, go into your Google Classrooms. Who has attempted the work that was laid out for them? Watched the video, completed the Google form, answered the questions. All right, where are they? What do I need to do with them when I see them the following day? For others, as Dave said, it could be a matter of, all right, you guys take the next 15 minutes and look at this. I've already got a Zoom or a Google Meet set up with this group to come in. I can check and engage with them for whatever it is. Some people may be comfortable enough to live stream a class or use a share screen to share your screen while you're providing instruction on something new and unique, and your students that are remote are looking at your screen through their computer, not at you necessarily or the other students in the classroom. It's going to be flexible, and as Dave said, different people will need differing levels of support. I know this seems, I'm answering in a sufficiently vague way to leave people scratching their heads, but the fact of the matter is, you have to have a multitude of ways to connect with those kids on those remote days. The last thing we want to do is paint you into a corner. You got to do it this time, this way, in this capacity, when that may not work best for your kids, and it may not work best for you in your instructional planning. Right? And the other piece of that is the students are obligated. You have to be on between 7:55 and 2:30, and get involved in the work that you're supposed to do with your classes on those days that you're remote. If you're not, and there hasn't been some email communication prior arrangement because you have a doctor's appointment, whatever it may be, with your teacher, then you're not present. Right? You're just not. It's providing structure on the student end as well, and being very clear about that. It is going to be different. And we may try some things in September and October and go, that was a train wreck. That just didn't work the way we thought. And we have to be able to take a step back and say, all right, we're going to change gears a little. What's working, what's not.
We've been told of the plan of half in-school instruction and half virtual learning. When will teachers be told what the platform is that they will be expected to use? And when will we be given time to learn about that form of technology?
We're rolling forward with the Google Classroom platform. We are still a Google for Education district. In terms of what resources and software packages will be available to us, it will be somewhat different than what we had in the spring because we've got a lot of free stuff. And we threw a lot of, Bill Cooper threw a lot of different resources at you. That gets trimmed back a little bit to what was used the most, looking at areas of resources and software that are most beneficial and easy to access. We are making the transition to using Zoom as opposed to Google Meet because it has more capabilities for the instructor to create breakout rooms, to share screens, to actively mute people a little more frequently and easily. And there will be training provided for that along with additional Promethean board training. And as that need arises, built into our grant applications going forward for this year, as many opportunities to provide technology and support as possible, as much as possible, and as needed.
Just elaborate a little bit on one thing is teachers who are using technology to engage kids remotely, I just want you to know that you are indemnified by the district as long as you are doing it in accordance with the expectations of your job. You're teaching a class, obviously if a teacher starts going off, and we get reported, that's one thing. It's like, oh, well, geez, you can't do that. But you're doing your job, a parent, is listening to their child or your interaction with their child, and the child's being disrespectful, and you're like, Dave, I expect you to listen when I'm talking because everybody else is trying to hear and you keep talking and interrupting me. Please be patient, I'll answer your question. All of a sudden, don't you talk to my child like that. Who the hell do you think you are? You're never going to be in trouble for that. You're indemnified by the district. You're covered. There's no exposure to teachers if you're executing your job in accordance with what you would be doing in the classroom each and every day. The district assumes all liability in that regard. Now, when we record, when we're asking secondary teachers to record classes and post it, we're going to give you best practices, where the camera should be, how to use those Promethean boards. So often what's being projected is the content that's on your Promethean board. And maybe your voice in the back, and you can hear kids answering questions. But that's what I mean when I say we're going to be a work in progress and get better and better as time goes on at using this technology.
You keep saying about the Promethean boards, but I know that in the middle school, not every teacher has a Promethean board.
You're absolutely right.
Provided or?
I think we just ordered 50 more. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think we just ordered 50 more. No. Why not, Coop?
Apparently from the disbursement of the CARES money and stuff, community board, they haven't been ordered. I don't know where it says with them, we are going to get them.
Okay.
As far as timeline, I don't know when.
All right. So there's.
I can speak to that a little
Okay.
bit. The original plan was to take our Federal CARES Act money and buy a whole lot of technology, but due to some of the way the funding numbers played out from the state, like we had a reduction in aid that was the same exact dollar amount as our Federal CARES Act allocation. But with that said, there are some opportunities to acquire additional technology and some of our other title grant monies. I think particularly in Title IV, and as we get more guidance on the loosening of some of the restrictions of how that money can be spent, it is being shifted to those types of resources.
Will live remote instruction be mandatory? If so, is this a privacy problem if there is a behavior with another student in school while the teacher is live? Now, the other students and parents / adults will have the ability to see the student and know the problems that are occurring.
I think I just spoke a little bit to that, about where we place the cameras, and that we don't want it necessarily just on students, but further clarification will come from the district as we learn as a profession what we should and should not do in regards to that exposure. That's what I was kind of alluding to with the in being indemnified by the district. Live instruction is not going to be mandatory at this point. We certainly encourage as much interaction with your students remotely as you can, especially obviously in a full remote setting. But in the secondary, those students who are full remote, their on-site lesson is what they're going to be getting remotely. I mean, that's why we're asking to record, because they don't want to come. We think they should come because we think that's the best education we're able to provide in this setting, is that for social emotional learning, for academic learning, for just full taking responsibility and general overall health. We think kids need to interact and be in school. At least that's how I feel, and I think the administrative team agrees, and I think the union leadership would agree in a perfect situation that that's what's best for kids. Right now, maybe full live. If we end up fully remote, would we like to see more live instruction? Yes. Is it mandatory? You know, that's a tough answer, because no. If somebody's terrible at it and they can't get it up, or we don't have the technology to execute it, then no, it's a work in progress. But clearly, the landscape is changing underneath us in our profession and many other professions, but ours is certainly a really important one. And this pandemic has caused us to really reassess how we deliver instruction. And now I guess we know where those prophets have been espousing the importance of technology for so long. We hear them loud and clear now.
We have been told that we need to focus more on social emotional learning than the curriculum. Will we be given time to plan accordingly?
Oh yeah, I'll address that. I don't know that more on social SEL than curriculum. I think it's coming into this with a greater awareness of an increase in social emotional needs of our students coming off such a long, extended period of time from the structure of school. And I've said this a number of times to both elementary unit leaders and secondary department chairs, is that you have, as teachers, the permission to call a timeout in the instruction and say, we've got a student, multiple students that are having some difficulty here, and there may be things that we need to talk about as a group, or give them the opportunity to share what they're experiencing in a safe way. Right? It is kind of goes back to that foundational piece of building classroom community. And if students are of any age are in a place where they're dysregulated, they're not settled, it doesn't matter how exciting or whatever song and dance you do. Todd's got his Egyptian outfit on, he's having a grand time, and it's great. It's a good show. But if they're not with you because whatever has dysregulated them in that moment or what they brought with them, there's no learning happening. And it's being able to take some time to recognize that and say, yeah, we may have tests at state assessments at the end of the year or in the spring, but you know what? Those won't matter a bit if I'm not attending to those emotional needs of the students that sit in front of me. No matter what we do, the test score won't matter, because they're not going to be with us enough emotionally to get what they need learning-wise. If we attend the best we can to those things on the front end, those assessments will begin to take care of themselves, right? It's a human beings first approach. State's not listening to hell with the damn assessments this year coming in. We got to take care of our kids and get them back in the flow of learning.
And that goes for myself as well as your administration, our building administration. We had this conversation with union leadership the other day. You know, I don't want teachers worrying about APPR. You know, we're not going to be using remote instruction to spy on you. You know, we're doing our best to stop the hemorrhaging. Students have not truly been in an educational setting since mid-March. That's calling it the COVID slide. Let's hope it's not as large as we fear it could be. Perhaps, you know, here's the silver lining. Maybe we're getting better at making them savvier, independent learners. That's what I want to see us challenge kids on their off days, is to get their hands dirty in discovery learning. Whether it's, you know, instead of being a passive receptacle in a classroom, listen to an expert talk in front of them, let them go discover some knowledge. Use the collective knowledge of the human race that they get on the World Wide Web and make an opinion or argument on a particular issue. You know, that's what we're worried about. We're not worried about the Regents exams. I mean, I've almost resigned myself that we are trying to stop a slide. We're trying to stop a slide, and we think that the social emotional piece of that is big, because if you talk to the social service providers who deal with child abuse and sexual abuse and all the abuses that we know are transpiring for some of our students, the reporting has gone way down since COVID struck. Do we think that the number of incidents have gone down, or do we think they've spiked with everybody home? But the amount of reporting has gone down. I'm not trying to paint an ugly picture, just a reality of what the lives of many of our children are like. And we think that there's some kids who are going to come to us and be in full need of all the love and support the school systems provide, and we can be that conduit to get them the assistance with other agencies that schools have historically performed. So we expect that. That's why SEL is high on our priority list. It's not higher than instruction, but it is right there. As Jim said, you can't have one without the other.
This question deals more with issues of academic integrity. How is there equity when a student is being tested at home one day and the rest are in person? How do we deal with issues of cheating? You know, kids have their own group text things going on in a remote learning environment. What's the accountability look like for that when it comes to assessments in our classes?
I would say this. If giving a traditional assessment, I'd have multiple forms, right? So that your group, your Dragons or Huskies or Sea Dragons or whoever they might be at the moment, takes an assessment on Monday. The group that comes in on Tuesday, same content. I might do a little more than just scramble question order, but have another form of the assessment, minimizes that. But students talk, they share information, and they did that when we were in the building. Kids took a test in period 1, their friends have it period 7. Now, in terms of how do we prevent them from writing an essay or a paper and going on Google and copying and pasting? They're going to do it, right? So then, how savvy are we in catching it? In terms of those traditional assignments, and cheating is cheating. If you've got them and you've taken a paragraph and plunked it into a website like Dogpile or Google, and it comes up with 16 documents that have that exact same paragraph, that's easy. The other option is to think about alternative mechanisms of assessment. Right? So if they have to create something unique and on their own, to produce that as an assessment over a long term, that may be an option. I think we can't hamstring ourselves through a lack of creativity in thinking about how we assess the students. Cheating's cheating, right? and that we're going to have to do our best to be one step ahead of them in some regards, and part of that is planning. I wouldn't necessarily give an assessment to both groups at the same time when half of them are operating remotely.
This is in regard to attendance. How will student attendance be accounted for when they are learning remotely? And I'm assuming the question comes from if you're teaching in person and you have students working remotely, how you manage attendance with both.
It's a good question. I had a conversation with an attorney about this as I was reading the questions. And there's just a lot of ambiguity from the state still on this. We are required to keep attendance in a full remote environment and a hybrid environment. So what does that look like? Well, the attendance defaults to present, and there should be some sign of life. This is my interpretation. There should be some sign of life on that day. And that if there's signs of life, that student's present. I don't mean to be flippant, but the truth is we don't have a great answer for that. In a perfect world, it is 11 a.m., I want to see you guys, and if you're not here, that's when I'm taking attendance, because I want to check in, connect, and see how you're doing on those math problems I gave you. 11 a.m., Dave and Jim aren't here. Dave and Jim are absent today. Click, click. And they say, but then maybe if later in the day you see that Dave and Jim were actually doing a lot of work and corresponding, you say, all right, listen, we're not trying to make it more hard, more difficult for the teacher. My hope is that with this, if it's going to be a very loose interpretation of being present, that our attendance is better than it's ever been. So I certainly don't want teachers worried about that as much as, yes, you have to take it. There's a default to present. If you have kids just not doing their part, if they're on a hybrid model, you're going to see them every other day and say, listen, you're going to start marking you absent. You're not doing what I'm asking you to do on your remote days. See if they'll come around. But in this environment, New York State wants to track what they want to track. We're worried about keeping kids from sliding anymore. That's where our priorities are. It's not in their number crunching algorithms in Albany.
There hasn't been a lot of guidance for students with special needs, and I was wondering how their unique sensory needs, emotional needs, behavioral needs will be met while maintaining appropriate social distancing regulations. For example, wearing masks, handle with care for escalated behaviors, close proximity for emotional support.
Cody or Brian, answer something like that?
Well, that is a challenge for everyone, regardless. And I know North County this summer ran, and Albany ran high needs special education summer programs. And the feedback on those is they were very challenging. And some teachers they spoke to worked really hard just to get a student to a point where they could keep a visor on, right? Mask was definitely out of the question. If you think about some of our students with tactile issues, right? So then it's then incumbent upon us to figure out a way, how do we provide the required services while keeping everyone safe? And I don't necessarily think there's a single answer to that, right? Just like the students' IEPs, every kid is unique and their needs are there. And if we get to a point that we just can't, then we have to investigate some alternatives for those students. The U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights since March has sent out these little dry 45-minute videos re-emphasizing every time the importance of following the IEP and Section 504 plans, and failing to do so is a violation of that child's civil rights. So they've been firing that warning shot across the bow since about March 25th, right? So we just have to do our level best, and kind of be forward thinking and say, all right, this has the potential to be untenable. What other options do we have to get there? And if that's providing the appropriate PPE for folks, because we get a new and creative, challenging situation, then those are the steps that we have to take.
I know since this question was written, things are changing because things are changing hourly, okay? But will teachers be teaching 3 different groups of students, Dragons, Huskies, and a remote learning group? Or will there be a classroom setup that will be solely remote learning students if there are enough students and families who want to do remote learning? So other teachers will only have Dragons and Huskies and not have to worry about the remote learning piece.
So as Glenn said, things have changed. K-5, we have 347 families to date signed up, and it closes tomorrow at noon. So that's K-5, 347 children. I can't break it down. The numbers are there by grade level, but it looks like we're going to be able to have roughly 2 sections per grade level of full remote learning. There will be teachers assigned to those sections, full remote learning. And if we can accommodate those immunocompromised teachers, we will, first and foremost, so that they are not interfacing with children in their classroom every day. Secondary is different. Secondary, as you heard me hopefully explain earlier, that all of our students are Huskies or Dragons, and if they choose a full remote option, they're going to be getting the equivalent of their in-person instruction through posted videos of that day's lessons. Do I think that's ideal? No, I don't. But I also think that it's important that we provide that option for those people who are demanding it, because they're saying they're not sending their kids. And I think offering this, at least it is a recorded version of what our in-person instruction is. So if that's what they choose to do, that's what we're going to offer. So the teachers, you're not going to have more kids in your caseloads, you're not going to have less kids in your caseloads, you're roughly going to have the same number. But how you challenge them and how you engage with them will be a little bit different than your traditional classroom of 25 kids.
And we're going to skip the next one, 9. It's, you guys have answered it all.
Okay.
Terry's up. Terry, you're up.
Will each student have an electronic device for when they are at home, for when they are at school? Will it be passed back and forth or stay home?
So, obviously our plan and hope is to have a device for every student, but right now we don't have 2,600 Chromebooks. So we're going to have to prioritize. We have ordered another 600. We don't know when they're going to be in. We are going to have students transport the Chromebooks back and forth 3 through 12. Not going to have K1, 2 transport the Chromebooks. And frankly, if there's a shortage, until we can accommodate, Bill's going to get challenged and pushed on this to make sure we can be there. Some people don't want it. A lot of people didn't turn in the Chromebooks last spring at the end of the year. It's unfortunate, but there was like hundreds of Chromebooks that didn't make their way back to the district. It's just totally irresponsible and selfish on some people's part. We've increased the replacement cost to $200 from $50. But the fact of the matter is we've had people return Chromebooks that they bought off of some local auction. So people are taking district-owned Chromebooks and selling them. So it's a challenge, but we will continue to try to get better at how we go about deploying and tracking and recovering these devices. And the plan is for every child to have a device, and as far as transporting back and forth, it'll be under the scheme I just said.
I am teaching very young students seated 6 feet apart in the classroom. Do they wear a mask as well as me when I do guided instruction? I typically walk around a classroom checking student work for accuracy. Can I write on student work, jumping student to student, making corrections, etc.?
The guidance is clear that anything inside of 6 feet of social distancing, the participants have to wear a mask. If a teacher is going to a student to help them with something, ask them to put on the mask. If they're like, I don't want it, well, I can't come help you, sit next to you and help you until you do put that mask on, right? So that the mask helps protect both people, right? So we're not going to ask a teacher to go sit next. So there's Todd, he's asking for help. I'm not going to come sit next to Todd to give him the help that he's requesting. If he, I'm saying, all right, Todd, I'll come help you. You can put your mask on, we'll get through it. Then as soon as I get away, you can take it off. The guidance is really clear about that from the state, and what's mandated and what's best practice. And we know that's going to be a challenge, particularly for the elementary classrooms, and I'm thinking of guided reading groups and all of the time that a teacher spends, squatting down next to a child and moving around the room. I'm not certain that we're going to be able to do it that way. We know that's best for kids, but under the circumstances, I don't know how much of that teachers can safely do, depending on the child, depending on the groups of kids, and how your room is laid out will impact that. But if a student needs that close assistance, ask them to put a mask on.
One of the things Laura also said about that question, because we had her take a look at some of these questions, is the teacher should put hand sanitizer on. If they are going to go around, wear the mask, tell the kids to put the masks on, to check work, that if the teacher's going to write on that student's papers and stuff, that they should sanitize their hands prior to doing so.
This question relates to teacher prep time. If students are going to be staying in the same classroom for lunch and specials as well as their in-class instruction, how will it work for locations for teachers to plan eat, that kind of thing?
I know at Boulevard they plan to use the cafeteria, I believe, and middle school. What are you guys doing?
We're going to lunch.
Lunchroom? Oh, they're going to eat in the lunchroom. Kids will be eating in the lunchroom. High school? You have a thought, Rich, on if kids are you're going to be eating in the lunchroom as well, right? Okay, so Boulevard, where in the other primary buildings, we don't have Trish and Lisa here. But I think there's something similar to Boulevard. I think they're going to use a similar idea. Okay, so they talked about using the cafeteria for places where teachers can plan and whatnot on their off period. Thank you.
What online materials does the district have to support the curriculum? Could a master list of resources be provided in an email?
Yes. We do have a number of resources available. I should have brought the list with me, but much of it went out in our resource pages in the spring, but that'll all get brought back together and shared with staff. And with ClassLink, much of those resources that we have available, student class lists are preloaded into them.
Maybe that's something we get out sooner than later as an administrative team, so people can start preparing now if they haven't used some of those.
Okay, we're moving on to the section that has to do with building procedures. How will bathrooms be monitored when students will be leaving different classrooms to use it?
How will classrooms be monitored?
Bathrooms.
Bathrooms.
Yeah, you got
Rich, do you want to speak to that? Say in the high school, that's one where you're going to see more freedom of movement of students.
Well, I would say that since we're trying to group kids and have them stay in the same classrooms, that those bathroom breaks will be different than the normal bathroom breaks. But I guess the simple answer is that we're going to have to use our custodial staff. Rockwell is trying to get some substitutes in, and we're hoping that as students leave those bathrooms, they'll be clean, and we're going to have to create that schedule as well.
Right, and you know, I know I can say with certainty we don't have the staff to have a custodian outside every bathroom whistling away for tips. See at a concert, but I think what you will see is a regular cleaning schedule of all lavatories in every building on a more frequent basis than you've probably seen in the past.
The next question you've already answered part of, but the middle part says, will a mask break be provided for students during the day, maybe outside or places where they can socially distance?
That at mass breaks, it'll be different at the different levels. If students are able to be in the instructional space and not wear a mask because they're socially distanced, then there isn't necessarily a need for a mask break. But in those environments where that's not possible and the masks are on for extended periods of time, buildings will designate spaces in order for students to go and have a mask break. And, you know, the guidance is if you can get kids outside in the air as much as possible and get creative and, you know, U.S. history can reenact Gettysburg out on the back hill and do some other things. Yeah, opportunities, you know, by building will be designed for students to have that possibility and teachers to have that possibility. We're hoping with the numbers and the breakdown that we currently have with splitting days that the need for mask breaks won't be as necessary as it might otherwise.
This one has to go back to the bathrooms, and I believe it's probably more of a high school concern, because we already answered when they will be sanitized. But how many people will be allowed to go to the bathrooms if we're having multiple different classes? Because at some point in time, if there was a congregation of 5 or 6 kids in a classroom, obviously the teacher can't leave, and if they don't have an aide to send with them, and then what happens when we say to a student, you need to wait, and then they end up having an accident?
So that's more of a secondary issue or primary?
I believe it would be both, but I'm thinking, I know in the high school, and I think I could get that we have big issues in the bathrooms being a congregated.
Huh.
Well, it's not just the congregating, it's aging, which is going to become at greater risk.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that we can't control that.
Well, I'll say this, I mean, just looking at the math of it, say we have 800 kids in high school, so 400 on any given day, 100 sign up for remote learning, we're down to 300. Out of that 300, 50 decide not to come that day, because we have a 75% attendance. My hope is that we're not going to have a run on the bathrooms on any given period. Yeah, as far as enforcing, one thing that by having half the number of students in the building on a daily basis, I'd like to think that management and supervision of hotspots such as bathrooms can be better monitored. That hopefully the deans and the principals will have more time because there's half the number of kids, that high times of transition, that we are, you know, placing ourselves who's available outside those rooms and ensuring that they're not being abused.
Why can't students use lockers, especially elementary students? During the winter, if they were to bring all their things into the classroom, snow boots, snow pants, winter coat, hat, gloves, scarf, lunch bag, backpack, etc., where would it go in the classroom? If they can't use lockers because of distancing, then can teachers create a rotation so that the students going to their lockers at the same time are at least 6 feet away from one another?
Brian, answer that?
Well, at the elementary level, we have lockers, some classrooms have lockers, some have cubbies. I think what we're trying to
Take your mask
avoid...
off, Brian.
Oh, sorry. I think what we're trying to avoid is, like at Boulevard, when all of 4th grade is out at their locker, there could be 60 kids out there, or 80 kids all at their lockers at the same time. I don't think that we have to refuse them using lockers, but we have to look at how we're using them. So maybe Dragons will have every other locker along the hallway. Huskies will have the alternating ones. And then we're not sending all kids out at the same time. You need to stagger a couple of kids at a time going out to their lockers so they're not large congregations of students. Same thing can be done inside the classrooms that have those cubbies. You can alternate those cubby areas. Because I don't think anybody really wants to have snow pants and coats all laying all over the floors everywhere. I think we can be creative and work together on that. Some teachers have come to me and said, you know what, in the fall, I don't mind if kids bring their backpacks into the room. They can stick them under their chairs. I'd rather not use lockers. I don't think we're going to mandate that anybody use their lockers, but we just have to be more sensible for the teachers that want to use them and that have access to them.
We've spent so much time and money lately prepping and training for active shooters and school safety. Part of that was a window lock and instructions to have only one window open and only in inches. Now, we're being told to open all windows all the way. So what about school safety, and what about as the days get colder?
There's no question that the procedures we've been putting in place to combat the threat of an intruder is in the back burner right now. Unfortunately, that's the case. I mean, I've had these conversations with Mike Etherton, and he's aware. I mean, he was a huge proponent of the single access point and met some resistance. We were able to do it, and now we're telling Mike we're going to 4 entrances in the high school. You know, he just shakes his head. He gets it. He understands. As far as the windows and only lift them up inches, I'm thinking we need to lift some of those blocks and open multiple windows. We have, Rocky's not here, but we have taken steps to increase the airflow of all of our classrooms. That's been part of the procedures. Some of our new capital projects just addressed those very issues, so we have some pretty robust air handling units. As the air gets colder, great question. I mean, I think keeping windows cracked for fresh air is good, even in the cold weather. If it means we have to spend a little bit more on fuel oil, et cetera, that may have to be the case. I'm not saying we're going to leave the windows all wide open at 10 below zero, or, you know, that's not going to happen. But keeping a fresh air flow into every classroom, I think, is a smart thing to do. I think we can strike a happy medium with meeting the threats of COVID and taking our best steps to ensure that our schools are as safe as they can against that potential danger, as well as keeping our guard against the potential of an intruder in our school. There's no great answer to that question, except that we are receptive to lifting those blocks on the windows.
This next section deals with student behavior. More of a comment than a question here, but there needs to be a zero tolerance plan for individuals who do not follow COVID-19 prevention protocols. Is there a plan for students who refuse to wear masks or follow social distancing guidelines? Should they receive remote instruction?
Yeah, and I think we addressed this some earlier. Yeah, if you've got a student who's belligerent, refuses for whatever reason, and is putting the health, welfare, and safety of the adults in the room and their classmates, then yeah, they need to be removed. And if it's persistent, then you know they're off to remote option. We cannot be so tight about it that it's one and done, because you may not know what was the trigger for that student in that particular day. It may be a student walking down the hall that is in our 811 program that you as the teacher do not know, and then engage them in a way that sets them off even more, which happens from time to time. You know, with any discipline issue, it's measured on a case-by-case basis. But if we have students that are persistent and belligerent, then yeah, that's going to be made very clear. You follow the rules. These are health and safety guidelines. Keeps everyone well. If you're refusing just to be obstinate, then sending off to remote is within our rights to do so.
And it's an option we've never had before. So, I mean, that's, typical suspensions are going to change dramatically, I would gather. I think we're going to try to cajole kids into, we just don't want to send anybody off to remote learning, so we're going to try to cajole them, use in-school suspension, maybe a couple days of out-of-school suspension to try to get them to comply. But at the end of the day, you get kids who say, my parents say I don't have to wear it, I'm not wearing it. Engage the parents, they're saying he doesn't have to wear it, I said he doesn't have to wear it, then he's full remote, he's not welcome. Case closed. Too many people that want to learn, and that's who I want to focus on. We'll do our best to continue to engage reluctant learners or people who don't value what we're selling here, but we're selling futures, and I want to make sure that we are at our optimal performance level for those who really want our services.
All right, this is our last section. You addressed some of it earlier, but this is on child care concerns. Parents who work full-time have asked me what daycare options are available to them for the hybrid method when their child is not in school on that day.
So the YMCA right now is the organization that we're sending parents to. The YMCA has talked about setting up satellite daycare facilities. I've hooked them up with the mayor of Gloversville, Vince DeSantis. He's working with the director of the Y, working with transportation to try to get our busing to be able to take kids to the YMCA. Still working with the city on the transportation and the way paying for it, and talking to them about what time they're making runs to the Y in case transportation to the YMCA is not available for some people. So there's other daycares. I'll give a plug for my Demon District's wife has a daycare. So, and there's people in the community that we've met with several times now who aren't daycare providers under the legal sense, but want to do something, whether it's working through church or volunteer organizations. They understand that these kids are in a hybrid model. It's unprecedented. People work. People have school-age children. You know, one of my goals was to see us be able to get in, and it wasn't just my goals. It was a lot of our goals to get our elementary-age kids in every day. We couldn't do it. We tried. We looked at it for a month and kept pushing Brian on his vacation. Keep thinking about it, because we knew that it was going to create hardship. But at the end of the day, we're limited by size, square footage, and staff and budget. It is what it is. I'm satisfied that we did our best to meet the needs, and now we transition to the full remote option for those who want that. But we understand that everything we're doing, there's some segment of our population that's having some hardship as a result of it.
Okay. What about teachers who have to work every day and their own children are only in school every other day? What are childcare options for those of us without anyone to watch our children or the money to pay for childcare?
So I think I spoke to that a little bit earlier in my conversation with the attorney. We are looking at whether the district can, should, will, legally can have some sort of childcare option for essential workers if we find ourselves in a full remote option.
So, just so you understand, it took Terry about 3 days to get your questions all onto one document, which was 40 pages long. And then your building reps, we asked at our 3-hour-long rep council meeting, which 2 are important to you. That's how we got it down to 6 pages. We know that there are other questions that we didn't ask. Some of them might be very important to you. So the last part of this is just open to miscellaneous questions. Thanks for going through the channels and funneling those questions to your building reps. As you can see, it's pretty wide-ranging and all very good and important questions.
Go ahead.
A little bit about the role of the school nurses,
As far as,
just what we can do, what we can't do, if there's no school nurse at a particular building because of isolation or anything.
well, all the buildings have, you'll have the well child room, which is your nurse's office, then you're going to have the COVID room. If you have someone in the COVID room, did you go last week to public health to fit tested?
Yes.
So you have a N95 mask, you have the gown, you have the shield. You will be able to go in that room with that child. The challenging part is at the middle school and the high school, we have nurses' aides that can take care of the well child rooms while the nurse is in the COVID room. But you know, your role is if there's anything going on, if you think there's a child to be sent home, you're going to have to go to that room with the child until they're picked up. There's going to be a chain of command set up where you'll have to contact me and your building administrator. I'll contact the superintendent, then I'll contact public health, and we'll get the ball rolling. But your day as a nurse is going to be the same as it has been in the past. But obviously, you know, you're going to have to look for signs and symptoms of stuff with COVID. But we're not asking you to do any more than you've been doing now, except for you will be ultimately responsible for that COVID room when a child or a staff member's in there. And just so everyone's aware, the nurses, when they're in with a child or staff member in the COVID room, they have to wear a mask and the shield, the gown, and gloves. But all of our nurses have been fit tested. So, did I answer your question? Or?
Yeah, but if there's no school nurse for like 14 days?
Well, we'd have to hopefully, you know, we do have 2 nurses at Boulevard. We're going to be hiring a nurse. We just lost one. So if that happened, we would have to take the nurse at Boulevard and send them to a different building. That's what we're going to have to do. But we know there's a shortage of nurses. We realize that. We are contracted with Nathan Tour Hospital. We will have either a physician's assistant or a doctor on site at the high school 2 days a week. Each day they'll be there half a day. We can send those people to a different building if it's needed, so we do have the hospital that we're contracted with to help us. So hopefully we're going to have enough help where a building isn't not covered for 14 days.
But we're not taking temperatures every morning on all the kids. You can have like aides or something.
Correct. We're going to have aides taking work. Our goal is to put the nurse in the nurse's office. We're going to have, you know, aides, people taking temperature. So if they do screen somebody, they're going to go right to the COVID room. We can contact the nurse and they can deal with it. But we're not going to ask you to go out there and screen everybody parked there.
It's more for clarification. If a teacher would prefer it if the students wore their masks in the classroom, even though they have been, the students will know that they don't have to so long as they're 6 feet apart, is it still allowed that if the teacher says they're to wear their masks during instructional time, will they be backed up for that?
You can, by the guidelines, a teacher may request students wear masks. In that case, as long as the social distancing rules are in place, the students, you're just making a request. It's not a mandate or a declaration. The state guidelines are very clear about that. If if you can't maintain social distancing, then they have to have a mask on. You can say, guys, I'm more comfortable if we all wear a mask. And you're going to have kids that go, oh yeah, great, no problem. And other kids are like,
Right.
for whatever reason.
There'll be no disciplinary consequences for kids who are socially distanced who refuse to wear the mask.
I know my classroom is very, very small. I don't think I can have 15 kids.
What building?
To fit in my room that's 6 feet apart.
High school? Well, that's something we'll have to take a look at. I'll talk to Dr. O'Malley about your classroom. We'll come in there and measure.
So I'm just kind of concerned because we've been kind of asking about the timeout and restraints. Because in my position, that's something that I do, you know, not often, but we do it. And I'm not really sure how we're going to go about a protocol for that. I mean, I don't know, like if a child is going off and they're dangerous and, you know, spitting, and I'm just really kind of concerned with that whole part of the plan.
It's not a concern. I don't have a good answer for it. To say that it's something we can look into to see what best practice recommendations are. Jim just said that North Colony ran a high needs program this summer. Maybe there's something we can learn from what they've done. At the end of the day, what we're going to ask is if a child is a danger to himself, or herself, or others, do what you have to do to minimize that threat. And if it's you know, protect yourself in the process. First and foremost, protect yourself. But at the same time, I think it's a judgment call thing. But I will do my best. I wish Ryan was here. We don't have any special ed population or administration here because they might have further insight on that. But I think it's worthy of our inquiry to see if there's best practice recommendations in that situation.
How will we be recording our lessons for the remote learners in high school?
The lessons can be recorded through, we're recording, Coop left, webcams. We're ordering webcams, but for now they can be recorded using a Chromebook. They can be recorded using Promethean boards. Certainly a combination of both would be ideal, where whatever's being projected on a Promethean board, if you have one, would be part of the presentation that would be recorded. Then your voice would be in the background, any Q&A happening with kids who were in the room. But that's a work in progress. It's something that the secondary administration understands that that's a major challenge, and the priorities are first to the core classes before we are concerned about, say, recording phys ed or music. Nothing against phys ed or music teachers, they're both very important. But our priorities are to make sure that the technology is in place in our core classrooms, that's what we're able to record first and foremost.
The actual PDF of the larger plan, yes, that is only in English. In terms of the website itself, you can flip it to Spanish language. If we need to add other languages to that, we can take a look at that. I think we can add 3 or 4 additional languages to translate the page. And just about any app that comes out on the market today has to be accessible in multiple languages. I haven't seen the app in action, so would have to double check that. But we absolutely want to make sure that we're accommodating our non-English speaking families. And if we miss something, bring it up so we can correct it.
Any other questions? Well, I'll say this. I really appreciate everybody who took the time to spend an hour and 40 minutes on a Thursday afternoon to ask questions, to hear it directly from us. I hope we've been clear. I hope we've been honest as far as, I know we're being honest, but what we don't know, we don't know. And we're working on it, I'll tell you that. And we're not sitting around with our feet kicked up telling war stories this summer. We've been meeting constantly, regionally, within the district. I can't say enough about the administrative team, clerical, B&G. The union leadership's been great, very helpful. And, the community is understandably on edge. I'm not sure, here's one last piece that I'll give to people is we don't want teachers going into their classrooms either stirring us up by saying the masks are unnecessary, it's all a bunch of crap, it's political, or other people say, on the other end of that spectrum, freaking out about kids spending time together outside of school. Kids are kids. Adults spend time with people that aren't family members. We're social creatures. Humans need to be around other humans, and I think we all need to just kind of take a deep breath, be happy that we're all healthy ourselves, hopefully we are, take care of our loved ones, do our best. We have to earn our paycheck to keep food on the table for our families, pay the rent, et cetera, et cetera. Let's try to do it with a chin up and a smile on our face and be civil and be grateful that we work in such an important profession. Regardless of what you do, you work in a school system, whether teacher, administrator, bus driver, cleaner, clerical, whatever. We all have important roles to play to support the education of children. And I hope, and attitude is everything. Attitude is everything, no matter in the best of times. Right now, chips are down. We got to rise to the occasion and keep a stiff upper lip and smile and be ready to meet those kids and not get them worked up and because I get it. Teachers are going to have anxiety. Aides are going to have anxiety. Administrators are going to have anxiety. We need to do our best to control that, to be part of the solution, and to offer the best programming we possibly can in the worst of situations. Could it get worse? I guess. Financially, that's a big piece that we haven't even talked about. The state coffers have been emptied because the economy's been shut down. We know there's a storm on the horizon. The federal government can't get their act together to fund states in this tough time. And we may be having tough conversations and decisions in the not so distant future. I'm not trying to heap on more stress for you. Just, again, being transparent and honest with what's on our plate. So just do what you can to be your best each and every day, and your kids need you more than ever. Thanks for coming, and thank you for the leadership for your facilitation. Thank you.